podcast been going?
Podcast is going great. It is the best podcast about G.I. Joe that you're ever going to listen to during the half hour listening to it.
By a guy named Joe.
By a guy named Joe.
That's awesome.
Tell you what, yeah, it's so different. We should get you on as a guest.
I don't really know that much.
Doesn't matter. You watch the show, we comment on it, it's the whole thing. Manhunter!
So good. Kate Spencer, amazing character.
Question. What's Manhunter?
Marc Andreyko did it. Ask it.
Marc Andreyko!
They came with the store.
Sorry, man.
It's our, kind of our thing.
So, I was a huge Obsidian fan because I loved Alan Scott, his father. I loved Obsidian's shadow powers, but every other writer, it seemed like he was either this conflicted anti-hero or this self-hating villain or this psychotic. And you came along and you really gave him a real purpose, and he was suddenly comfortable with himself.
There's also a butt in this book.
There's
lots of butts in that book.
Oh.
The reason for Obsidian, the choice of Obsidian making him come out of the closet was when DC asked me to do the book, I wanted her law partner, Kate Spencer Manhunter, who's gay, to have a relationship, and I wanted it to be a superhero. I felt like it would also explain a lot of his issues with his powers, where if he had this self-loathing and this internalized homophobia, that would be amplified by superpowers. Mm-hmm. So it just felt like I wasn't really, all the pieces were there, I was putting the puzzle together. I don't think that I created anything with him. I thought it was all there from Roy Thomas on.
Yeah, because I mean, I do remember in the Justice League of America story in the 90s where he's trying to tell Nuklon that he does love him and he doesn't feel like he knows how to label that or even that it should have a label.
Well, and that was interesting because if you go back and find that scene wasn't him telling Nuklon he loved him romantically.
Right.
It was a gay man saying, "You're my best friend and I love you," but because I'm a gay man, you think it's the other kind of love.
Interestingly, in that same run, Ice Maiden talked...
Yeah, but comics are mostly straight guys, and you guys can have lesbians,
Right.
but you can't have gay guys.
Right, and that's what I was going to bring up, is that there's a lot of pop culture that is more accepting of a woman being gay or bisexual, because it just seems safer somehow than guys.
Guys have a fear of penetration, although if you talk to their girlfriends, you'll see how bullshit that is.
Well, I mean, one of the original icons of comics, Wonder Woman, comes from a lesbian culture.
Yeah, but I mean, we couldn't say that directly until '89. I mean, there was the times that we were in, but then also the Comics Code Authority came out in '54, and there were 3 rules concerning how sex and romance and marriage were to be portrayed. Combined, these 3 rules essentially meant no LGBT content or characters, and those particular rules didn't go away until '89. But we did have characters that certain writers and creators hinted at.
And even those didn't go away completely in '89. A lot of times, like with the issue of Alpha Flight with North Star, that was released without the Comics Code, I believe, but the Comics Code was still around. So the Comics Code didn't officially disappear until 10 years
Oh yeah,
ago.
no, absolutely.
But but the Comics Code Authority also, you go back and read the stuff, Marvel, they couldn't use the word zombie.
Right.
So they had to come up with a word called Zovembi. They added like three letters to it, and just vampires weren't allowed, and all that sort of thing. So the sex part was only part of it.
So you talk about North Star, who was... It was the public face in the 90s of the news stories where North Star comes out as gay. But if you look at some of those early issues of Byrne...
John Byrne wanted him to be gay, and Byrne
it was very obvious.
John Byrne wanted him to have AIDS. If you look back at those early issues, he was coughing, he was sick.
Right,
Then John Byrne left the book, and it turned out that
they turned into an elf.
were like trolls from Asgard, and he was allergic to Earth, and it was just...
So as you were reading Alpha Flight back then, right? I believe, Did you pick up on that as a young man?
Oh yeah, that's what I thought they were doing. I completely thought they were doing that, but once again, it was too progressive for the time, and it was a best-selling book. So back then, that was dangerous because the comics were still considered things for little kids, and they were still on the newsstand.
And there was a lot of the same stuff that we talked about with Obsidian, with him being so close to his sister, he was so close to Jean Marie.
Yeah. Which is weird because most of my friends and I are not incredibly close to our sisters. But apparently, you guys think that because they're girls, maybe we're femmes.
The presence of women and maybe too much Diet Coke. Apparently, those are the enemies.
You're halfway there.
I mean, one thing though, like as much as we progressed, it bothers me that with transgender characters and a lot of bisexual characters in superhero comics, a lot of them are also shapeshifters. Like particularly transgender characters. There are really only 2 I can think of in DC and Marvel that are not also shapeshifters, and that's the Shining Knight who's also sort of a question mark. It's left.
But we don't know if the Shining Knight's actually transgender.
I don't- right, we don't know
or if
if-
it's just Mulan with a knight. It's
Right,
just a
well-
girl in
right.
armor.
Well, and
because
Paul-
Grant really danced around that.
Right.
There was so much going on in that original Seven Soldiers of Victory series
Right.
that there wasn't a lot of screen time for her.
Right.
Or him, depending on if it's a transgender. But I never read the Shining Knight, Grant's version, as transgender. I read
Right.
more of a woman pretending to be a man. I just
And
wish
going
we could
to
get some
decide.
actual transgender writers to write transgender characters. I was actually on a panel at PhoenixCon a few years ago, a gay representation panel, and a transgender audience member said, well, why don't you write trans characters? And I said, well, I have trans friends, but
Right.
I don't know that world, and I don't want to do it wrong.
Yeah.
And she said, well, that's bullshit. That's a bullshit excuse. You shouldn't be afraid of it. And right, I'm like, yeah, you're right. But it's still such unsoiled ground that I don't want to go into that and have one of the first characters of note be that. But although Paul Jenkins is doing a book for Aftershock about
Right.
transgender characters because he has some transgender people in his family, I believe. And so that's a very personal, experiential thing. It's the first transgender superhero lead of a book.
As much as it's great we're making progress on the page, we also do need the other voices behind the page. We need more creators and more.
Yeah, I'm not one on diversity for diversity's sake because I think you end up risking disillusioning people who have legitimate talent. That's it's a real slippery slope. But we do need more diversity in comics.
Yeah.
We're seeing it now, like Willow Wilson, who's Muslim, writing Ms. Marvel. It's fantastic.
Absolutely.
We have an actual female writer who's Muslim. You would think it would be a male because it's such a in our zeitgeist, it's such a masculine culture, but she's
Yeah.
writing one of the best-selling books in the country, and it's a great book. So we just need some more trans creators, but I think they'll be coming. I think it'll be happening sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I mean, now that you kind of mention it, like I'm thinking of any of the trans characters. Like Mystique is one that people say because she's doing all the shape-shifting, and then you go to...
Do her parts change when she changes?
Yeah, she
Yeah.
Everything changes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah, that's how
the original story.
That's how Nightcrawler. She's Nightcrawler's father.
Yeah.
That was the original intention.
Yeah, and
Oh my
Destiny,
God.
Destiny was supposed to be
Destiny's
Nightcrawler's mom.
Yeah.
Right. But
But
then that
Marvel
was
wouldn't let him
kind
do
of-
it.
Or then you go
shut
to Runaways and the lesbian-ish relationship where...
But it's an alien, so it's
It's
got
an alien,
asterisks next
right,
to it.
'cause
So it's not-
it-
it's a cop out
and
because
that's
it's actually
exactly-
not a cop out. I don't want to say that because they were doing what they were doing to make that work, even of its time period.
Right.
But it's not technically, it's not a human being who has gender.
Right, in Skrulls for the most part.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this topic of Iceman, which also came up recently with Sulu with Star Trek, and where they've taken a character who's typically canonically considered straight,
Yep.
and they've made a reversal mid-publishing, with them.
I see people's issue with Iceman because it can feel a little, look, we've got a gay one now.
Right.
I don't think that was Brian's intent at all. I think Brian Bendis is one of the most progressive. I mean, he's got a couple adopted daughters who are African American. He's always been, one of my dear friends, he's always been very proactive as far as diversity and representation. Miles Morales.
Yeah.
And Sulu, I don't think there's any issue with. I mean, as a kid watching Star Trek, I always thought Sulu was gay. I mean, the fact that I guess in the books he has a family, I'm like, well, you can have families and be gay. I think George Takei was just being loyal to his friend by saying that wasn't what Gene intended, because I think if Gene Roddenberry was around today, there'd be more gay and trans characters on Star Trek than heterosexual characters, because that far in the future, I mean, kids today, 20-year-olds now, they're all fluid sexually. It's like, there's gay and straight alliances at my high school, and I grew up in the whitest part of Ohio ever. So that, I think, is George defending his friend, but I don't think that I think Sulu needs to be gay in Star Trek, because in a fandom of, we're all about diversity and we're all about progressiveness, there is a little bit of misogyny and homophobia around the ends of some Star Trek fans. They want it on their terms, and I think if you made a character who was the gay Star Trek character, then it's tokenism. By making a character who already exists in the and if you want to be a nerd about it, it's an alternate reality Star Trek. It's not the canon Star Trek of George Takei.
Now, one thing you brought up is the homophobia of it, and the one that always stands out to me is going to Watchmen, and you look at the classic character who they killed her because that was in its the origin of right after the war and everything like that.
I think what he put in there was real. I think that if post World War II, if a lesbian superhero kissed a nurse in Times Square like that, she would probably be murdered. I mean, there were lynchings going on in this country until the early 1970s.
Right.
So, and then we have things like Matthew Shepard and the black man in Texas who was dragged behind his truck. And we have what's going on now, which could be called lynchings to an extent. So I don't think Alan Moore. I think Alan Moore put that in there to make it real because he was trying to make real superheroes. And Alan Moore's also been so progressive with what he's done in Swamp Thing and in Lost Girls and even in From Hell. He's incredible. He's probably weird as shit, but he's also really progressive and really in tune with life experience, not the specificity of heterosexual stuff.
With all of these, it's just you want them to be characters, and you don't want them to just be defined as this or to like. It's not that you can't ever go into a gay character or an LGBT character dying, but when it keeps happening as like where it seems like their only purpose is to be the tragic character who died because of their gayness. That's
that documentary that came out years ago, The Celluloid Closet. They do a montage of all the lesbians and gay characters who die tragically either by their own hand or were struck down by God.
Exactly.
And it is kind of crazy. But I want to get to a place where we can have gay jerks.
And I think that's a part of the current social representation in comics that's going a little bit too far. You have to put them in peril. You have to put people through the ringers. Whatever the representation that they are.
But that's part of comics. Comics.
Oh no, I agree. But you see a lot of backlash against that. Not necessarily. I agree with you that they shouldn't be tokenized and killed just for the sake of kill.
When you're putting them in peril? Is that about them overcoming the peril, or is it about someone else being motivated by their peril?
Yeah, I agree.
And that's a common problem with many groups.
Totally agree.
That's the evolution of man chart with minority groups. You start out as exotic, then you're noble savages, then you're intriguing, enigmatic villains.
Yeah.
Then you're comic relief. Then you get to be real people. It's happened with black characters. It's happened with women characters. It's happened with Native Americans. This isn't something new or exclusive to gay and lesbian characters.
Of course not.
What about Deadpool? He's pansexual and a complete douche.
Yeah.
At the same time.
Yeah, he's a douche.
So that's
Yeah.
Yes, that's your ultimate.
Absolutely, and Ryan Reynolds was saying he wants him to have a boyfriend.
I so want John Cena to play Cable.
Well, John's already played a gay character too.
Yeah.
In
I want
his Trainwreck, right?
Yeah.
If I can see John Cena railing Deadpool, that'll be the best sequel since Godfather 2.
I can't disagree with you. No, I think you're.
Well, I mean, he got pegged by his girlfriend in the first one, so
yeah,
it's not that much different.
Which honestly, I had a problem with that scene in that he wasn't into it. I thought, no, bullshit.
Well, we didn't see any lube.
That's a valid point. Science.
Pablo, I know you've been dying there to talk about your friend, Kevin Keller.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Kevin Keller, and what I really like about it actually is it makes a gay character, and it also portrays it. I guess like Archie's still considered a kid's book for a lot of kids. I feel like he positively portrays the LGBT community as just a regular dude.
You can try to make that argument with any character that they're token, but if you actually look at it, like, no, he's a character.
Yeah,
well, it's a gay character created and written and drawn by an out gay creator.
He also has a superhero outfit.
And you've also got to give Archie Publishing a lot of credit because they were, when this was happening, when they introduced Kevin Keller, that was one of the most progressive things in the world. That was a risky thing for them. That could really damage the brand for them in a lot of ways, but it didn't. And when there were the million moms who complained, I think it was like 3 moms.
Yeah,
it was like 3 of them in a trailer.
People complained about it?
The Archie publishers stood up to them and said, no, this is representative of the real world.
What we're all saying is we want to see more of them as characters. So some of them can be bad, some of them can be morons, some of them can be jerks, and not all of them need to have a sci-fi explanation for who and what they are, whether it's like, well, I'm bisexual because I'm from an alien culture. And we've already got so many metaphors happening with sci-fi powers and everything, but let's be real about these experiences more. We've done a lot of metaphors because of code rules and everything. Sure. Let's be real now about some of this stuff, and it can really help people.
I would just rather have well-written characters regardless of orientation. I think the quality of writing makes any character viable.
Absolutely.
Agree 100%.
Absolutely. And with that, I'm going to pick this up.
Are you finally going to pay for something?
Yeah.
Actually, I think I'm going to buy this one this week.
But
Whoa.
There are other
$5 extra if you want me to sign it.
There are other copies here.
I'm good.
You don't have to take mine.
Thank you for watching another Comic Shop show. We want to thank our special guest, Marc Andreyko. Marc, tell them about the project you're working on.
Yeah, I'm kind of spearheading a tribute book, charity book for the survivors and the victims of the Orlando club shooting last month. It's going to have over 200 comic creators. It'll probably be the Guinness Book of World Records.
It's amazing.
Order for the most contributors, and the list of contributors, which I can't say now, is insane. The day after the shooting happened, I just put something out on Twitter saying we should do something. By that Sunday afternoon, I had 50 people say, let's do this. So it's been great. We have DC and IDW are co-publishing it. It's going to be 2 100-page volumes. And you'll be shocked at the list of talent. We have everybody that we could possibly have except Jack Kirby working on this book.
That's pretty amazing. And we're also going to have a link in the description to a GoFundMe that will help fund survivors and victims of the attack as well.
Are you stealing from our store again?
He's got it.
Get him!
Had it coming.